Glad you could join us today on Earthfile. Welcome to the program. I'm Ayola Kasim. Nations made their first global commitment towards curtailing the surging consumption of single-use plastics in March 2019. But critics said then it failed to confront the planet's pollution crisis, with the United Nations blocking efforts for more radical action. A new study published during the last week of July 2020 found that the amount of plastic waste flowing into the ocean and killing marine life could triple in the next 20 years, unless companies and governments can drastically reduce plastic production. Today, we'll take a look at some of the initiatives to help curb the negative impact of single-use plastics. Do stay with us.
Ghanaian entrepreneur Nelson Boateng went from manufacturing plastic bags to recycling them and now makes building materials which he hopes will one day pave all the streets of his native country. In 2015, Nelson was mindful of an impending ban on plastic bags and decided to turn around his company, Nelplast Ghana Limited, which originally made plastic bags from recycled materials.
So I have to think of a way to keep the business going by going into the bricks instead of producing polybag with plastic waste. Second is anytime they mention about flood, pollution in the environment, I feel very bad because I know I'm a big contributor. So those are the things that move me from producing a polybag to the bricks. Because with the bricks, it goes out not to pollute, but also to save the environment.
In 2018, Nelplast Eco Ghana Limited was set up as a plastic recycling and building materials company. Today it employs some 74 workers with an additional 300 plastic collectors who pick it up from open-air dumps, blocked waterways and abandoned sites. At the factory, the waste is weighed, washed and crushed before it is mixed with sand to produce eco bricks. The mix, made up of 30% plastic and 70% sand, is transferred into an extruder which turns it into a paste that is then molded into tiles, paving bricks or blocks.
People always say plastic is the problem. But for us, plastic is not a problem. It's the humans that are the problem because we are not taking responsibilities of our actions. People throw away the plastic, they dispose it off in any way they want. The plastic never flies to our beaches. We carry them out there. So plastic is not a problem. We humans are the problem for not finding solution to the plastic that we see around.
The company produces between 600 to 1,000 bricks a day from around 2,500 kilograms of plastics. Eco bricks are 30% cheaper than concrete ones. Nelson says the use of recycled building materials is still in its infancy in Ghana, but in time he hopes to provide a sound, environmentally friendly and cheap alternative to products from the established giants of industry. Nelson says eco bricks are better than concrete because they are lightweight, stronger, more durable, fungi doesn't grow on them, and they offer better insulation.
We can be able to compete with the concrete producers if we are able to expand our production capacities, because they are doing over 20,000 bricks per day, whilst we are doing 1,000, due to lack of machineries and space to operate.
Nelson also says his eco bricks now pave the Ministry of the Environment and the front of the National Theatre. He says some of his sales come from word of mouth when satisfied customers recommend his company to others.
What I see in the future is very big, that one day this plastic waste will be turned into bricks that will be used to pave most of the roads in Ghana. They're also saving the environment from plastic waste and its implications.
Nelson wants to rid Ghana of the plastic waste that is polluting the environment and water bodies, secure job opportunities for the local collectors, while advancing the global sustainable agenda of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. But just as many are making efforts to rid the environment of single-use plastics, Consumption has increased, especially now during the coronavirus pandemic. That's according to the International Solid Waste Association, a non-governmental organization. Face masks and latex gloves are washing up daily onto Asia's remote beaches. Surgical masks are a common sight in urban Hong Kong, where residents have been stoked by fears of the coronavirus outbreak. But now many of them are somehow washing up on the beaches and uninhabited Soko Islands. And according to activists, these masks are threatening the island's fragile ecosystem.
And it was only on the last visit on February the 28th that we suddenly started noticing the surgical masks that people are wearing now with the coronavirus spreading. And we started to notice them on the beach in large numbers. That day we counted 60 to 70 just on this one small stretch of beach. And that was quite alarming for us.
Gary Stokes, a co-founder of a marine conservation group, Ocean Asia, has been collaborating with the University of St. Andrews Sea Mammal Research Institute to conduct a study on ocean trash on the Soko Islands.
So marine debris is a threat to not just ourselves, but also the actual animals in the environment. We've seen all around the world whales washing up with plastic bags and bottles and things in their stomachs. These masks are another addition. They're no better, no worse than the rest of the trash.
Stokes said he cleans up and discards the surgical masks he finds on Soko Island's beaches so that he can take into account how many new masks washed ashore during his next visits. During his last few trips to the islands, Stokes found dozens of ubiquitous surgical masks amongst the growing piles of waste, which he said floated in with the tides. He reckons some of the other debris probably dates back 20 to 30 years.
Every single one of us who has bought a bottle of water, who has used a plastic straw, who has used a lunchbox, a polystyrene lunchbox, every single one of us is responsible, and every single one of us can make a difference to make a change.
A few local residents who visited popular Repulse Bay for a beach excursion said they made efforts to properly discard their own masks.
It's not nice to just throw your mask on the ground. It's not hygienic and it may spread the disease.
Find an envelope that your mask can fit in, that's made out of paper. Keep it away from water. Actually, bringing a small envelope to put your mask in is more convenient.
When the outbreak started just over the border, panic gripped Hong Kong residents and thousands joined daily queues to buy masks at retailers. On the other hand, landfills worldwide are piled high with record amounts of takeaway food containers and online delivery packaging. The new research produced by scientists and industry experts for the Pew Charitable Trust and Systemic offers solutions that could cut the projected volume of plastic entering the ocean by more than 80%. The roadmap for stemming the runaway ocean plastic waste crisis is among the most detailed ever offered in a study. If no action is taken, however, the amount of plastic going into the sea every year will rise from 11 million tons to 29 million tons, leaving a cumulative 600 million tons swirling in the ocean by 2040, the equivalent weight of 3 million blue whales.
Plastic pollution is something that affects everyone. It isn't your problem and not my problem. It's not one country's problem. It's everyone's problems because all people, all communities, all governments around the world recognize that it's a problem. It's impacting communities. In some places, waste are clogging up waterways, causing flooding. In other places, they're washing up on beaches and people are not able to enjoy their vacation. In some communities, it's affecting fisheries. So it has really broad impacts across society, and it's something we see ourselves. So people are experiencing the impacts, they're seeing it, and the biggest problem to all of this is it's going to get worse if we don't do anything.
The strategy laid out in the report includes redirecting hundreds of billions of dollars in plastic production investment into alternative materials, recycling facilities, and waste collection expansion in developing countries. This would require a U-turn by the energy industry, which is rapidly building new chemical plants around the world to boost plastic output as its traditional fuel business is eroded by a rise in cleaner energy sources. The amount of plastic produced annually has been climbing fast since 1950, when global production totaled 2 million tons. In 2017, that number was 348 million tons and is expected to double again by 2040.
If it were up to us, we would be putting more emphasis on the need for reduction and stemming production of plastics and putting restrictions in place, for the continuing production of disposable, particularly single-use plastics. At the same time, we'd be requiring corporations and companies who are, the main purveyors of disposable plastics to invest in alternative delivery systems.
Big plastic makers, including ExxonMobil, Dow, and Chevron Phillips Chemical, have said they are committed to tackling plastic pollution despite increasing production. The projects they fund focus on cleaning up waste. The study recommends that government implement laws to discourage new plastic production and provide subsidies for reusable alternatives.
If industry were allowed to continue with their projections of growth, let's say until 2050, which quadruples production during this time, most of the recommendations from this report would be meaningless.
The plastic industry has lobbied against government bans on single-use plastic. Some of the biggest buyers of plastic are consumer goods companies like Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, Nestle, and Unilever. They have all made commitment to use a greater amount of recycled content in products in the future. But current government and corporate commitment will only reduce the amount of plastic flowing into the ocean by 7% by 2040, the Pew and Systemic study finds. To cut the flow of ocean plastic by 80%, paper or compostable alternatives to single-use plastic will be needed, and packaging should be redesigned to more than double the share of recyclable material, the study says.
So far, the discussion has been very polarized, where we had different opinions, camps, whose propositions went unreconciled. There were some, we have to get away from plastic altogether. There were some who say, look, this is something that can easily be burned and buried. It's not that much, and it's efficiently stored in landfills. There are others who say that we can clean up later. We have done this many times during eras of very strong economic growth. There has been an ecological overshoot. There's enough time to address it later. Again, there are others who tell us we can just recycle ourselves out of it. And again, there are others that tell us that there needs to be a bio-revolution, where we are creating a new material that actually is benign to and compatible with nature. So all of these different positions have sort of a very small kernel of truth, but in their absoluteness, they're absolutely wrong. And that's why we wanted to have a reconciliation of those points. And our report is fairly strong in saying that the most efficient solution to get out of the crisis is, in fact, to dematerialize our demand for what today is single-use plastic.
Some criticized the study's inclusion of incineration, chemical recycling, and plastic-to-fuel plants as ways to dispose of waste, saying these methods involve the release of climate-warming carbon emissions while also helping to sustain plastic production. As global concern over plastic pollution rises, corporate giants such as Coca-Cola and Unilever are pumping cash into a recycling initiative in Kenya they hope will provide a model for other developing countries. However, the voluntary scheme lacks legal backing, leaving a few companies to pick up the bill for everyone, a problem that doomed a similar project in Kenya before. Many multinationals are scrambling to support recycling, stung by criticism from environmentalists over pollution and keen to be able to reuse valuable PET plastic. Researchers warn that industry-led schemes are inadequate unless laws compel manufacturers to take responsibility for the waste they produce.
Corporates and industries will go for voluntary commitments. However, we feel that governments need to put rules, regulations, legally binding, so there is a way to continue looking and monitor what the industry does.
Such extended producer responsibility laws exist in 63 countries, including most of Europe, a December 2018 report by UNEP found. Kenya has a smaller similar scheme. The initiative is called PETCO after a successful organization in South Africa. But in most cases, the funds are a fraction of what's needed. Manufacturers stepped up recycling of plastic bottles, converting the single-use packaging materials to brushes, brooms, clotheslines, pegs, and drinking straws.
We need about, I would say about 360,000 US dollars, equivalent about 36 million Kenya shillings, to be able to adequately collect and recycle the 5,900 tons. Yeah. And of course that excludes all other administrative and other fees, but that is what we need as core budget to be able to actualize that volume. And remember, every year our volume targets, it goes up. So what we need this year is not what we'll need next year or the year after.
A year after it started business in Kenya, after bottlers quarreled over splitting collection subsidies, court documents show. Jashai said the collapse doomed his business, Green Plastic International.
That the industry takes this plastic pollution issue with the seriousness that it deserves, and not just for a publicity stunt or just to get the government off their backs. Work with the recyclers, keep your promises, and for the recyclers not to find themselves in the position that I found myself in a few years down the line, where I had to close shop because I was promised one thing and the industry did another.
A total of 300 million bottles weighing 7,700 tons were processed by the country's recyclers in 2019 as manufacturers strived to create jobs out of the cumbersome waste, industry data shows. For a country that generates up to 21,000 tons of plastic annually, the current 30% recycling level did not pacify the government. Kenya initiated a strict plastic bag ban in 2017 with heavy penalties for those who flout it. Kenya is considered to have the strictest penalties in the world, making manufacturing, importing or selling single-use carriers punishable by a prison sentence of up to 4 years or fines of up to $40,000. Anyone caught using them also faces a fine, which so far has been between $300 and $1,500, and a possible prison sentence of up to a year. But there are some exceptions to the law. Certain kinds of single-use plastic bags are still allowed for baggage bin liners, medical waste, construction, and for packaging foods like bread, as well as the use of cling film. 3 years on, the country announced the ban of single-use plastic in protected natural areas during this year's World Environment Day in June. And as urbanization increases, so too does the waste. Plastic is an incredibly useful material, but it is also made from toxic compounds known to cause illness, and because it is meant for durability, it is not biodegradable. It now creates problems for plants, wildlife, and even human population.
The major problem with plastics really is that they are really not degradable. As a result, they end up staying in the environment for such a very long time. And any material that would have that kind of persistent nature will eventually become a problem in the society. With regards to plastics, it's particularly bad because these plastics, particularly the single-use one, get thrown into the environment, and then they get broken down not into other bits, but into small pieces that end up in the in the stomach of organisms, in kind of fishes, whales, and the rest of it. And they block the alimentary canal, so they're not allowing digestion of food to really take place. And this has really been found to lead to the death of organisms that have really taken up a lot of these plastics into their body.
But as the head of the United Nations Environment Programme said, plastic is a miracle material. Thanks to plastics, countless lives have been saved in the health sector. The growth of clean energy from wind turbines and solar panels has been greatly facilitated, and safe food storage has been revolutionized. The economic damage caused by plastic waste is vast. Plastic litter in the Asia-Pacific region alone costs its tourism, fishing and shipping industries $1.3 billion per year. In Europe, cleaning plastic waste from coast and beaches costs about €630 million per year. Studies suggest that the total economic damage to the world's marine ecosystem caused by plastic amounts to at least $13 billion every year. The economic, health and environmental reasons to act are clear.
You know, plastic pollution is not just about the seas, because sometimes when you talk of the sea, people think it's far off. It is about our health. All these cancers that we are talking about, which has become an epidemic in our society, partly it is plastic pollution. So it affects you as an individual. It's not just the seas. Yes, eventually what is in the seas will affect you in what we eat, what we drink, but the cancers that our people are suffering, we can reduce that by taking a strong stand on plastics. There are many solutions. One, you should provide people with alternatives. And the companies that are now producing plastics can use biodegradable products. Instead of having a plastic bag, you can have a paper bag at the supermarket. That is at that side. But you also, so you can't just introduce a law without introducing other options for people to use, because people need things to use. So everything goes hand in hand, but you need strong legislation, you need strong policing, but you need also to provide options. That is how countries that have managed to do something about plastic pollution, that's how they have done it.
Plastic bag bans, if properly planned and enforced, can effectively counter one of the causes of plastic overuse. Nevertheless, to tackle the roots of the problem, governments need to improve waste management practices and introduce financial incentives to change the habits of consumers, retailers and manufacturers, enacting strong policies that push for a more circular model of design and production of plastics. They must finance more research and development of alternative materials, raise awareness among consumers, fund innovation, ensure plastic products are properly labeled, and carefully weigh possible solutions to the current crisis.
Private companies also have a role, because some of them manufacture the plastic products, and they can look at which ones to manufacture and which ones not to manufacture. Also, they use them. So companies that use them in terms of packaging, in terms of many other things, should also have a role in thinking, should they use the kind of plastic that cause more danger? Should they use the kind of plastic that we throw away when we use it once? Or should they make more durable plastics, and should they wean us away from this addiction to all forms of plastic?
Governments have been advised to engage in a broad range of stakeholders in the decision-making process as they seek to tackle the crisis.
Nearly a third of plastic packaging escapes waste collection systems, and at least 8 million tons of plastic leak into the oceans each year, smothering reefs and threatening marine life. Action is gearing up around the world, from countries banning plastic bags to companies vying to cut their usage of plastic. Yet environmentalists advise that more efforts are needed to both reduce and recycle plastics. That's our program for the week. Thank you for spending your time with us. We hope to be back with you next week, but please be sure to check us online. youtube.com/channelsweb is the address. Do click the playlist menu and then click Earthfile to see this episode and other episodes of the program. From me, Ayola Kasim, and the Earthfile crew here in Lagos, it's bye for now.